Hello there, you can call me KBC, and today we're going to be doing a little glow up on this old sketch I did. But first, you saw the title of the video. Look at it, it's so pretty and shiny and new.
Oh no, that's a good peely.
Ooh, look at it, there we go. Haha. Oh, I'm so pumped. Okay, so I've never owned a tablet with a screen on it before. In fact, I've never used a tablet with a screen on it before. Like a drawing tablet, I should say. Like I've used like an iPad or an e-reader before, but this is my first time like actually handling one of these things. I've been used to using this really crappy old little Wacom. I'm sure anybody who's ever drawn digitally knows exactly what I'm talking about. It's a little gray sucker, and it's about the size of a mouse pad, and it's impossible to use. Well, not impossible. It's impossible to use effectively. It's impossible to use to, like, emulate exactly how I draw. And that was the issue I've always had with doing digital art. Oh, quick aside, this little awning I'm drawing here kind of looks like a little guy, so I'm just gonna steal him. He's gonna hang out in the top corner with us for a little bit. So, actually getting to... The response time on this machine is great. When I'm using it, I actually feel like I'm in control. When I do a line, it feels like, yeah, that's the line I drew. When I make a little squiggly mess, it's like, yeah, that's because I shook my hand midway. I felt my arm move. Like, that was a me issue. When a line turns out wonky, I feel like it was my mistake. It's like Dark Souls. It doesn't make the mistakes. It lets you know that you're the one making mistakes. Whereas with like the old Wacom tablet, God, there's a delay on the input, and I have to be like looking up at the screen. I can't really, you know, judge my... God, I gotta look at my keyboard when I type. Anyways, it's taking some learning and getting used to, obviously. This is a whole new experience for me. But it's like, there were so many points where I was like in a flow state, and then I realized everything hurts. It's been hours, I'm starving and thirsty, and I was just gone drawing, which never ever happened with my old little tablet, because I struggled with the input, and it felt so disconnected and disjointed from what I was actually doing, like I was struggling against it rather than using it. Anyway, as far as software goes, this is Krita. It's free and open source, and that is all the qualifiers I need to use the program. This is basically my Photoshop replacement. It has a lot of the same editing features. Adjustment layers are the same. It's laid out in a very similar way, but it's actually designed for drawing, and it's got a bunch of built-in brushes. And because it's open source, there's tons of plugins and brushes and crap all over the internet you can get for free. And I never tried any of that stuff because I was stuck with this stupid Wacom tablet. That being said, if you have any suggestions for brushes or add-ons, God, I would love that. I'm just using the default brushes. Here I am using this like default inking pen. Things I like, lines turn out real crisp. Things I don't like, God, can you ever tell where you stopped a line and then restarted it later because you messed up. It's at this point that Danny came for a little visit. Everybody say hello, Danny. That's my old office chair. I was gonna toss it out when I got my new one, but she just loves that thing, so that's her throne now. She lives there. However, I've since relocated that chair to the other side of me in my setup, because I'm a lefty. I'm sure you've noticed in my other videos. Usually, my right hand's on the mouse, and so she's on my left side. But now, with the tablet, I'm drawing the whole time, so I have to put her on my right side, and I have to, like, tuck her in a little... tuck the chair in a little nook, but she's happy wherever she is. That's the great thing about Danny. Anyways, I should probably talk about this drawing I've been doing for 5 whole minutes. originally this piece was concept art for my homebrew campaign setting. And so you can see these trees that have been sort of grown upwards, and then their branches intentionally like woven together at the top to create this sort of like onion dome sort of scenario. And inside, the people of Yanaso built their homes. And this is a tradition that's been going on for almost 1,000 years, maybe longer. Who knows? So the story goes that back long ago in history, there was originally a small, regular little village here that was under attack from a great enemy, and a hero came to town and saved them. And after seeing the destruction and death all around, they shed a single tear, and that single tear grew into a great tree that came with a big protective ward that hid the town away from harm, so that nothing bad could ever happen to it again. And so, since then, the great sages and druids of this little gnome village have been growing trees into homes to expand the canopy and sort of like bring this magical ward along with it to encompass and blanket the whole town. And so, after hundreds of years, you have this great town in the middle of the woods, away from the rest of the world and their problems. But that comes with problems of its own, because generations of assumed safety meant that when something finally did go horribly wrong, they were woefully unprepared. But that also means that the very few people outside who even knew that it existed, once they found out something had gone wrong, it was too late for them to help. And this all blossomed from a request from one of my players. They wanted to play a gnome. They liked their home village to have been sort of secret and tucked away from the world until something horrible happened to it. And originally the request just involved sort of like homes in trees with little sort of Ewok village style catwalks. And that was about it, other than the player's backstory and trees. That was sort of all I had to go off of. So when my player comes up with something for the backstory that I want to integrate into the lore, what I like to do is take the things that the player has given me, like, you know, trees, catwalks, abandoned, blah, 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 and just sort of rough out a sketch, some concept art, and that's where this came from. Originally, I started with this tree in the middle, and you can see in the original sketch, that's why that one is inked and has detail, and everything else is kind of garbage. But as I was working on it, I put this little awning out front, this like tarp thing, and that informed a lot of the world building for this town, right? So we have this sort of like two-tiered system of the city, where there's more of like a walkable residential area up top, and then you can naturally segregate the sort of commercial stuff to the ground floor, right? You have these main thoroughfare streets that more so run alongside big pocket neighborhoods of trees, like big clusters of trees, because you see how these ones are all tight here, and there's no roads going between them. So this is more like a neighborhood or a city block, and that area would rely more on the catwalks for people to get around, and of course you can go, around between them and stuff. But there are these main roads that do sort of run alongside and surround these big pockets. And along the sides of these roads and down underneath, families could put up these tarps, and tapestries, and awnings and stuff, and they would hang out here. Maybe they have a little outdoor patio living space. Maybe they sell goods on the road. A little family business selling trinkets and doodads, But also, these quilts and tapestries would be treated like family heirlooms. They would be passed down through generations. They would be mended and repaired. They would be added onto. Some of them treated like heraldry or coats of arms or flags. Some of them to represent businesses that have run for a long time. Some just a way for people to know when they're home. Which was a neat thought I had when, flashback to that blanket covered in cat hair at the very beginning of the unboxing portion of this video. My mom made that. Thanks, Mom. My cats love it, hence the cat hair. I was a little detail sort of inspired by that I thought I could bring into the game, and fit really well with the lore that was already sort of happening. That's just like one little detail that blossomed about the entire culture of this town just from working on a little sketch. That was never in my mind from the beginning. It just happened naturally over the course of detailing it out. But it's this act of having to visualize a space and bring it into reality and then make it feel lived in, right? To make it feel like people do things there, you sort of have to come up with the things that they do, and then one inspires the other, and it's a lovely cyclical process. tons of little things can happen while you're doing that. Here I am trying to figure out shading. And eventually I settle on this sort of like charcoaly, dulled pencil sort of brush. And God, at the beginning, look how great it looks in this little corner. That little corner with the lighting, oh God, there's something very like berserk about it. Like early mid-chapters berserk. And I mean that purely in vibe. There is no universe where my actual visual art skills are near the level of Kentaro Miura. Rest his soul. But I really started loving this brush at first because of the contrast between like the bright lights and the soft, sides and this like really gritty dark texture. But once this brush sort of was covering the whole canvas, the texture is a little overwhelming and it makes the whole piece extremely like grainy, and it looks that's part of the learning curve, I guess, right? I mean, maybe it looks completely fine, and that's just like a preference thing for me. I end up smoothing it out later. It just didn't look right to me. Speaking of things that didn't look right to me, the whole like color of the piece was off to me, and I couldn't figure out why. So originally when I made the sketch, it was concept art for me, and then I used that concept art to work on a battle map a long time ago. So I whip out this battle map, and I'm looking at the map, and I realize, oh yeah, it's fall. Ugh. So here I am with this like really bright greens, and this doesn't look like abandoned or menacing or spooky at all. So let's get all these like rich fall colors in here, really add some dark red, get the ambiance going. I end up changing the color of the lighting too later. That change alone did a lot for me personally to make the piece feel like the actual place it's supposed to be. And I know that like I'm sure I could have done whatever and it means nothing to all of you, and this all just feels better to me. And I'm just using like a default built-in like leaf brush to do that. It's just like splattering some colors up there. Now, it is to be said, but yeah, as much as the texture didn't come out perfect, I was fairly happy with how the shading turns out. Again, the shading is something I'm mostly comfortable with, like doing lighting. The issue is when it comes to colored lighting. I'm not very proficient in using color in pieces. I never have been. Growing up learning to draw, it was just drawing pencils. Like, I am very imperfect. I am very much a trial and error kind of person. When I go at something, I do a little bit, and then I look at it, and I see how bad I messed up, and then I do it all over again, learning from my mistake. For example, we are 13 and a half minutes into this video, and I've been recording audio for 4 hours. So working in pencil is great because it doesn't really matter. You can erase the lines. You can just like sketch really rough shapes and hew them down into the shape that you actually want. And then afterwards, when you finally do something permanent to it, like inking, you already have the shape right there in front of you. The hard work of learning and messing up everything has been mostly done. So growing up, color intimidated me. Paint is very permanent when it's on there. Same with freaking crayons. And coloring pencils, I mean, I'm sure there are erasable coloring pencils now, but certainly were not when I was growing up. Or at the very least, the coloring pencils I had did not erase very well. So making the mistakes would permanently ruin the art. I would put in all this effort and then I would just mess everything up. And that discouraged me a lot growing up. I do get discouraged fairly easily. It's a character flaw I work on daily. The good thing about digital is you can just delete the layer. Like, that's it. You can just erase and only erase the thing that is selected. This ability to turn color into sketching is very powerful to me. I'm not a perfect person. There's many things I wish I didn't do. And as I continue learning how to... Am I really going to commit to this bit? As I learn how to do color in digital, I'm sure it will come better to me. Things in this piece could have been a lot better, like how these stained glass windows turn out in the end. I like, theoretically, how I did it. They kind of look cool. They don't look like glass. I should have gone back and tried to get like a sheen on them probably. So even though I'm not like comfortable with color I wanted to try out my new options, because being able to do it digitally with freedom and impunity and a device that actually responds to me, God, it felt like night and day. I cannot express enough how helpful it was for me in particular to get a tablet with a screen on it. That's not to say that this whole operation went off without a hitch. I had to learn, where to put it on my desk. I had to figure out what angle to put it at for it to be comfortable for me, how long I can sit at it before my arm just gives the heck up. Oh god, the mess of cables behind my computer. And I've been trying it out in Blender, in Aseprite, I've been trying it out tons of places. And now's when I start smoothing out all those gritty shadows and messing around with the lighting color and stuff like that. I'm just trying to get everything to look a little bit less amateurish. Just a smidge, hopefully. Adding in little clutter on the ground, like little leaves starting to fall off the trees and little twigs and stuff. Realistically, there should probably be a lot more on the ground, but I was more than 10 hours into this piece at this point. I was a little ready to be done with it. But yeah, things I like about the piece: shapes turned out very well. I like a lot of the shapes of these, like trees. They all feel like different and wonky and quirky, like they were grown. I like the shapes of these awnings. I like the little gaps between the trees. I kind of like how this little patch of grass turned out back here. It's highlighted by the big beam of light coming in between these trees. That's sort of right there in the top left of the piece. And I'm just finishing up here. This was the original sketch, and this is how it turned out. Right off the bat, things I don't think turned out well. That brush I used for the shadows, it gets weird and grainy in a lot of spots. I had to end up smoothing it out. I should have just tried a different brush. I do like the edge highlights, however, in a lot of spots. I feel like the shadows could maybe be a bit darker, but the central beam of light, I love how it's like very apparent. It's a big beam of light. I like how it's apparent that a lot of the lighting on that side of the trees around there is coming from there. I don't like how it completely washes out the detail in the tree behind it. I probably could have tried a little harder to make that work. Another thing I do like is how these like tree knots turned out at the top. They're really freaking cool looking. I didn't think they would turn out this well, honestly, looking zoomed in on it. That little patch of schmutz on the walkway in the foreground there, that moss, I probably could have done more like patches of moss on the trees. Thoughts, feedback, greatly appreciated. Let me know in the comments what you think. And if you have any suggestions for any, brushes, add-ons, helpful tips or krita, or just drawing in general, leave that feedback in the comments. Probably should say like and subscribe. And as a reward, here's Danny.